Okay, then we will call to order our Architectural Board Review agenda for February 24th. And as usual, we'll start with public comment. Anyone in the audience would like to address the board? Seeing no one, we did receive comment specific to a project though, but no other public comment. So we will close public comment. Move on to approval of the minutes for February 10th. Oh, we didn't do a roll call, but I guess we should do that.
Thank you, Chair Moore.
Here.
Vice Chair Six.
Here.
Board Member Black.
Here.
Board Member Olson.
Here.
And Board Member Whelan.
Here.
Board Member Cunningham and Watkins are absent.
Okay. So now we'll move on to approval of the minutes for February 10th. Okay, we have a first. Do you have a second? Second. Several seconds. Mr. Whalen.
Item
Yes.
on number 4, under the motions, number 4. The main entry parapet shall have a parapet return walls added so that the element seems more like a form than a facade.
FORM. Okay. Anything else? Any other comments? Any discussion?
Yeah,
Oh.
Chair, for same motion, number 3. Does anybody understand that one? I don't. Stepping plane. I don't understand. Better mitigate the proportions of the stepping plane occurring along the roof lines. Am I?
That's a bit vague, yes.
Does anybody know what we're talking about there? Better mitigate the proportions of the stepping plane occurring at the roof lines, along the roof lines. I don't understand that.
Motion number 3.
Motion number 3.
Somebody made that comment, obviously something like it.
Okay. Don't recall if that had to do with the proportions of the cornice or molding element at the parapet, or what exactly that had to do with. So,
Who made that? Watkins? Shall we wait for him?
can we just?
Board Member Watkins will be absent from today's meeting.
Well,
Is it possible to review the video? And I know these came from the video, but
Shall we just leave it there and let sleeping dogs lie?
that's fine with me. Okay, then any other comments? Okay, we had a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And then consent minutes for the 18th.
For the Architectural Board of Review consent agenda for February 18th, item A, 110 Anacapa Street was given project design and final approval with condition, and item B, 630 West Arriaga Street was postponed indefinitely due to the applicant's absence.
Okay. Do we have a a motion to accept?
Make a motion and accept.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? No? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And all abstain from?
Okay. And for the consent agenda for the Architectural Board of Review for February 24th, 2020, item A, 136 West Cannon Perdido was given project design and final approval as submitted. And item B, 3714 State Street was given a 1-week continuance with the applicant to study using the metal screen in lieu of plaster walls, provide elevations for each location to verify the heights, provide appropriate planting that can be trained onto the screening, and provide a plant list with plant species and sizes.
Move we accept.
Okay, I'll second that. Any discussion? No? All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries.
Abstain.
Okay. So, any announcements, requests by applicants, et cetera?
Staff has 3 announcements today. Board Member Watkins will be absent from today's meeting. Board Member Cunningham is conflicted out of item 2, 400 West Pueblo. And it is the end of February, which marks the end of Chair Moore handling consent, I believe. And I don't remember what the order was, but it was a 2-month rotation. I believe it was
Not
6?
Richard?
No. Okay.
Who is up next?
All right.
Excellent. Okay. Any subcommittee reports? Has anyone met? No? No reports? Okay. Then we are through our general business. And technically, we could start. But we should wait. Well, I know the applicant is outside, so. Okay. We have item number 1, 11 Anacapa. Okay, we're settled. So this is 11 Anacapa, which is a proposal for commercial remodel of an existing structure. The project consists of remodeling and adaptive reuse of the existing 11,201 net square foot warehouse building, and includes conversion of 2,500 net square feet to a restaurant use with 1,834 square foot outdoor dining patio, conversion of 1,291 net square feet to retail, demolition of 1,310 net square feet of second floor area, a parking lot reconfiguration and accessibility improvements, and a new trash enclosure and transformer. Project design and final approval is requested. The project requires compliance with project compatibility analysis and the urban design guidelines, outdoor lighting design guidelines. It was last here, May 6th of 2019, is that right?
Correct.
Okay. Does staff want to
Yes.
off?
Thank you, Chair Moore. I'm Tony Bauman, the case planner assigned to this application. And I should probably give a little bit of background for the newer board members. This project has been around since 2017. It came through ABR review and had project design approval and final approval pretty much as you see it on the plans, particularly the architecture was the same back then. It was, after ABR final approval, it was submitted in building permit plan check, and sometime during the course of plan review, it was found that the coastal exemption, I should have mentioned it's in the coastal zone and required or staff determined it to be exempt from a coastal development permit back then. And while in plan check, it was challenged to the Coastal Commission, and the Coastal Commission determined that the project did not qualify. It was not exempt from a coastal development permit, but required a coastal development permit due to the increase in outdoor restaurant seating and the parking that goes along with the additional seating. So then the project was submitted for development application review team review for the coastal development permit, and continued with some more conceptual reviews at the ABR. The additional parking, a parking modification was requested along with the coastal development permit. The parking lot configuration, as you see it on the plans, was the outcome of the DART review and the request for the parking modification and the valet parking operations that go along with that parking lot. So the Planning Commission approved the coastal permit and the parking mod, and that was appealed to the City Council. City Council denied that appeal and upheld the approvals. And then the City Council's decision on the coastal development permit was appealed to the Coastal Commission. And there was a hearing scheduled in February for that appeal, but a couple of days before the hearing, the appellant withdrew the appeal. So the city's action was final on the coastal development permit and parking modifications. And now it's back here again for ABR approvals. So they're requesting today a new project design approval and final approval. And the most recent hearing in May, today's plans are just a follow-up responding to the comments from the ABR in May. We sent out videos, or Matthew sent out links to videos and meeting minutes from those previous meetings if some of the newer members wanted to get up to speed to participate in voting on the project today. I think that's all I have. I'm here for questions if any come up or if you have any now.
Okay,
Mr. Chair.
yes.
Tony, do any of these appeals and issues that have labored this project have to do with aesthetic design as we are burdened with?
No, the appeal concerns mostly were centered around the parking, the concern that the project wouldn't provide as much parking as would really be needed, particularly with the parking modification. And the parking's sort of related to the coastal development permit, because a large purpose of the Coastal Act is to, enhance and maintain access to the coast for everyone and not fill up the area with cars parked for restaurants and such.
So those issues are not in our purview.
Yeah, those have been decided.
Thank
So
you.
it's strictly aesthetic design today.
Thank you.
Hopefully following up on previous direction that the project's had through its long course of city review.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And what I'd like to do is just read to the board some of the discussion and then the motion from the last hearing. So we did a couple straw votes. The first one was how many board members can support a waiver for the reduction in perimeter planting at the parking, and that passed. Second one, how many board members can support the location of the trash enclosure and the reduction of landscaped area at the Anacapa Street property line, and that passed. So we made a motion at that point to continue the project to the Planning Commission with the following comments: that the increased landscape widths along the heads of the parking spaces and the reduction in the width of the driveway are positive changes since the previous meeting. The waiver for the finger planting requirement in the southern row of 9 parking spaces will be acceptable. The waiver of the minimum 5 foot to 3 foot for a planter for parking lots adjacent to the property line would be acceptable. A significant graphic and bold pattern is required for the center of the permeable paving due to the nature of the parking configuration. Number 5, the board looks forward to reviewing a site lighting plan after the project goes to the Planning Commission. Number 6, the building architecture as previously approved is acceptable. And finally, the board finds the project tentatively meets the compatibility analysis criteria and as listed. So If you could introduce yourselves and take us through
Thank you, staff.
project.
Thank you, Chair Moore and fellow board members. Ed DeVicente, architect with TMHA.
Oh, and Courtney Miller with CJMLA Landscape Architects.
So, Chair, if I could have a pointer. This project, as staff mentioned, has been before the board numerous times. Our first review was February 27, 2017, so really 2 years ago. And we did see this body 6 times, and we did get to a place of final approval. So really, I don't want to necessarily spend a lot of time unless the board really has any questions. Feel free. I'm happy to take you through more about the overall property, the building itself, conditions. So to keep things more just from where we left off last time, but I did want to provide a little bit of context. It has been a long road for the building owner and tenant. There were 2 permits ready to be approved at that time, one for the TI for the restaurant, which is where we're really affecting the facade, and the rest is for the roof plan, the roof and the site plan. When the roof was significantly damaged in 2017 September with the storm that came through the area. So the team is really ready to move ahead here. We also have some financial pressures for the financing for the tenant as well, and we're at a point where days matter. So because of this, staff has been very helpful in letting us we're actually at-risk plan checking right now because, again, the plans were ready from a permitting standpoint to be approved. So they're reviewing the plans, again, for both permits, mostly relative to the changes of the site plan, which affected accessibility in the new valet layout. So it's a little bit of context of where we find ourselves. The Planning Commission was absolutely unanimous in their approval of the project, as was City Council, highly complimentary of the building, and even made comments about, in particular, the Helena facade, which really isn't in our project scope, except we have to adapt for some flood mitigation issues, that whatever can be done to preserve that side of this unique building be done. So it was really a public urging, and even I think Councilman Sneddon was saying if there's anything special that can be done in a historic category to preserve this, that should be pursued. But in either case, that's the other side of the building. We really are focused today on the site plan changes and the landscape that was different from the previous approval. And this board, at the last 2 conceptual views in April and May, was again kind of reiterated the approvability of the building and the detailing. So, but we do have a full and complete package with all that detailing of the building elements. We also have the previously approved materials boards. Those are here again if you'd like to see them. So I'll leave that for questions for the board. And really we'll go to the last couple of comments from the previous hearing. So that, and yes, again, we're here for any questions that some of the new board members may have, or if you're just seeing different things you want to ask about. So really we're left with 2 items last time. One is the paving, and the other is site lighting. So I'm going to take care of the site lighting component, and then I'll let Courtney come back to the paving. So the background on the site lighting was this is something that was part of the previously approved permit package and was presented to the board both in September 18th of 2017 and a review after final April 23rd of 2018 for some electrical adjustments and transformer issues, et cetera. I think as we talked last time, the transformer is no longer on site, so we don't have that on. It's in the public right-of-way for screening. But we did make adjustments to the site lighting based on the revisions to the site plan. So I'll go ahead and take us through that, and I have the cut sheets as well to present to you. All right, so relative to site lighting, much of it is just building lighting, or in particular in the tenant space itself, but we are adding a number of wall-mounted fixtures on the building. So let's see, here's the Helena side, here in kind of the alley between the neighbor to the north. We have a wall-mounted fixture near this exit here, and then a wall-mounted fixture as well near this parking area and these tenant openings. And then the same fixture just around the building in the parking area on either side here. And also we have some pole lights as well. As you recall, much of the internal, so the site lighting now is running these internal planters, which are proposed to be removed. And so now the new lights have been moved onto poles really around the perimeter. So here we have the A fixture on a pole, another next to the trash enclosure here, and a third and fourth here close to the Anacapa side, and the last one on the south end of the parking. So again, these fixtures were previously presented. And let's see what we have. They're a Sun Valley light, the LCKM series. They're LED. And the A lights are a pole mount. It's 12 feet tall, so it's got the fluted base, and then it's got the straight shaft. And the fixture itself is the same for the pole mount and the wall mount, other than the mounting configuration. So it's the version 1. It's a 40-inch fixture, which is about 20.5 inches wide at the top, is what you can see. So again, these have been presented before. And then the mount for the wall sticks out about 18 inches to the center. It's a very simple bracket. All of these are to be painted Malaga green. That's the next sheet here that has the lighting specification. So that's what we have proposed for the pole light and the wall lights. They're a 3,000 watt temperature. And then additionally, for this raised deck area, there is a series of step lights, which you can see indicated. So those are this WAC lighting, light. It's a 4011. They're fairly small. They're 5-inch by 3-inch. The aperture is only about 2 inches by, well, it looks like about 3 by 2. And these are going to be black. This was a comment from the board in a previous presentation. So these will be painted black. It will essentially go away. Also LED, and these they went to a little bit warmer, so a 2700 temperature on these. Oh, thank you, Courtney.
And just to be clear, those continue all the way to Helena.
That's, thank you, Chair. That is correct. So where we have these walk paths that are more public and really getting to access to the new rear door to all of the other tenants in the building for the accessible path and continuing to the Helena side, yes, those step lights continue along. And so that, the technical information for that is here in this schedule. Again, the Sun Valley, the LCKM1 for the A and the B fixtures, and then the wall mount, and then the temperatures there. And then the Malaga green was the color for the pole and the wall and post-mounted light. So from a site lighting standpoint, that's what we have for you. The rest is building lighting. Again, we can go through that in the electrical plans, but this is the item that was requested. Again, we also have the materials board if you want to take a closer look at that. So with that, I'll pass it to Courtney to take a look at the landscaping and the specific comments relative to paving.
Before we leave the lighting, is there anything else on that deck or that canopy
Relative to
this project?
additional lighting? Yeah, there's a lot of actual lighting on the project.
Okay.
There's other things. Again, they were previously presented. So this is something that was commented on last time. And in one of the consent meetings, we came back, and they're probably in the file if you really want to look at it, but there's some awning elements that go around the bar and also over the door. It's probably best to look at them in elevation. And those have integrated LEDs into them.
Okay. Downlights.
Downlights, correct. Under the canopies, yes. I think we even have a detail of it, actually. This actually isn't a bad elevation. It's a little bit descriptive with the punches we're doing with the red glass blocks. But over the entries, you can see where we have the covered canopies, and then turning the corner here as well with the integrated lights. And we do have a detail for that as well. I think it's the last page. Trying to find it upside down here. Is it interiors? Might be in my sections. Door window details again that we've seen before. Here we go. Okay, so in the opening details with where the awnings come in and attach with the steel structure, we have an LED channel mounted basically on the underside of the fins there. So this was something that was brought in at consent with the actual shop drawings, which we do have. And again, we do have that available, I believe, in the files as it was brought in under the previous approval, if the board would like to take a closer look at that. Any other questions?
Well, I think I just wanted to make sure that the lighting was fully described for the board, so.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, then with that, we will pass it to Courtney to take us through the voting.
Okay, so I handed out a 11 by 17, and actually I'm going to steal this one so I can put it on the screen here. So the comment the last time we were here was related to the hardscape design that you see at the center of the parking lot that fronts the building. Previously, we just had, I think, just permeable pavers with it's like a gray mix color, but with no pattern. And so the comment was, you were looking for some kind of pattern. I think to address, the visibility of the hardscape at the front of the building. So when we really started to drill down and look at this, we felt that the best approach was to introduce something that really went well with the building design, but that didn't overpower it. Because when you take a look through the Funk Zone area and that whole neighborhood, bold hardscape design is not something you necessarily see. There are some newer buildings that have elements of that, but because of the nature of this particular building and how it's an adaptive reuse type of design, we felt that something a little bit more subtle would be more appropriate in terms of the industrial neighborhood. So what I have here are some photos, just context, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with. So this is the back of our building. This is what it looks like today, facing Anacapa. This is a building that's just up the road, also on Anacapa, and then a couple of our neighboring buildings just right across the street. Just to give a sense of, what we're seeing in the neighborhood, this is the Helena side of our building. So what we're proposing is a 3-block color inset that really goes along beautifully with what's happening on the buildings. So we had a couple of different options for this, and this is the one we landed on. So we will be implementing the same pavers that we had before, which do match what's already been installed on the southerly 2 properties, so the buildings that front Cabrillo and then this little bit, which I have photos of too. And then we'd be implementing this 3-block 8x8 that matches exactly in terms of its module size with what's happening with the glass block in the building. So that's the intent. This is the product. It's an Aquilina linear. There's quite a few different sizes for the actual field paver, and then the accents in an 8x8. And then we brought an updated plant palette and image board as well. So this represents what's being planted, and then you can see our gravel spec and the pavers again there. So I'll just show you on the plans as well. So random pattern goes along with what's on the building, and that pattern exists on these two faces of the building. So again, we really didn't want to overpower that. We wanted the attention to be paid to the building itself. And then I also wanted to mention another thing that we did do at the last meeting that was a change, was we did narrow up the throat of this driveway as a result of comments from the board, which I think was a really good change. So we have, healthier landscaping at the front too. So I think that covers it for us. We just have the one sheet, and then we have a detail too, if anybody would like to see that for the pavers, but it's a fully permeable detail. And I think that's it. If there's any questions.
Yeah, Courtney, I'll just add, and that's a good segue. The Planning Commission and the City Council had no additional questions or comments related to the design of the project after we last saw you. So the work we did in the last two conceptuals, narrowing the drive, adding the pavers, they haven't seen the decorative paving. That's something new for the board's consideration per your comments. But everything that was previously seen by the board was received very well. So there's no additional changes that were necessary in going through those processes today. So nothing else has changed other than what you asked us to take a look at. So with that, Chair, that's our presentation.
Okay, thank you. So we will now open for public comment. If there's anybody in the audience that would like to address the board, if we can get you to fill out a pink slip over there and hand him in over here. In the meantime, we did receive a email from William Reeling regarding the accessibility of this project, and his concerns are largely to do with possible issues of problems with accessible access and parking lot design, and concerns for unapproved work and things like that that is not really part of our purview, but we appreciate the email nonetheless.
Could I have a question for staff?
Yes.
So this is for staff. Is it true that of all of these items brought here by Accessible Santa Barbara, none of these things are in our purview?
Well, the project scope, or I should say one concept of the project was because the Helena Street facade of this building is very interesting, has a lot of character and provides a lot of funkiness in the funk zone. So the project all along proposed to leave the Helena Street elevation as well as the south elevation as is. So the project description has always stated no changes proposed on those two elevations of the building. And Mr. Railing's pointing out that there might be some unpermitted improvements on particularly the Helena Street side of the building. But again, the project wasn't proposing to address that side other than the code requirement for flood proofing on the exterior of the building and in the doorways all around the building.
Correct. And so as they're not proposing that as part of their scope of work, there's really nothing for us to review in that location.
It's something staff can follow up on and see if we need to address any unpermitted improvements on the building. If so, we would look for those to be vetted out by staff, and that could return to the board maybe as a review after final review for additional changes. if
That was
necessary.
the answer I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay, and now let's have, is it Len? Yeah, that's me. Sorry. Come on up, you have 2 minutes, if you could.
Well, my name's Len Germano, and I actually am a business owner here in Santa Barbara in Ray's building. And I just want to say that I actually support the project moving forward. I'd like to get this done and finished. Another thing is I think the building itself is such a unique building. I get nothing but positive feedback within my business. Numerous of people that come to Santa Barbara, worldwide, if not nationwide and statewide, they're taking pictures of this building. I think we should kind of try to preserve it the best way we know how, and but yet accommodate the patrons that tend to show up here to Santa Barbara. But I just want to just speak on behalf of the plans moving forward, and I think it'd be essential for us to try to get this done ASAP. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, have Naren. Following Naren, Mr. Williams.
Hello, my name is Nurin Porter Kasbadi. I'm a tenant in the building as well. I'm one of the owners of Lighthouse Skate Shop, and we love it down there. It's super nice, and the redesign seems pretty cool. Get the parking going, have some more spots for customers, and with the ADA, make sure everyone can come in. It's looking like a good plan so far. I don't really see any problems with it, so we're excited for it to happen. And that redesign on the Anacapa side looks really cool with the inset on the building. Didn't really ever think of that. But yeah, we support it, and thank you.
All right, thank you.
Good to see you all today. You are charged, obviously, with making resolving the questions of detail, but I want to just speak from the perspective of the big picture, and I think how this fits into the big picture of the Funk Zone and why it's so important. Big part of the city's policies in the late 90s and early 2000s that were formulated around the Funk Zone was precisely wrestling with the quandary of how do you deal with current commercial realities without losing all of its character and what makes it the Funk Zone, right? And I think this project is a great example of how you can adapt to current commercial realities and still preserve that essence of a true Funk Zone feel, not just the facade of one, since the actual artists and artisans are being retained, right? And so rather than, I think this project is an important one and should be put forward as a poster child precisely because we want people to say this is the Funk Zone, not the place that was formerly known as the Funk Zone. And the allowances that the zoning allowances that the city made, and of course the judgments you make will help facilitate that project and that feel going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And next we have Wallace, and then followed by Jill.
Hello, my name is Wallace Pyatt, and I'm a local artist in the Funk Zone. I'm part owner of Lovewarn at 11 Anacapa, and recently just opened an art gallery right next to Lovewarn. I've always loved that building. I've been in the Funk Zone for years and have seen it grow exponentially. And what I love about this building, it has this artistic movement and feeling to it. If you look from Cabrillo to Helena, it's just so inspirational because there was no rules followed, but there's something very gritty about it and very cool. And I think it's when I look at it, I just get so creative. And we have people from around the world coming to our gallery and our store. They take pictures, they comment on how cool it is compared to State Street. Jill and I used to have stores on State Street, so we saw that grow and become something a little different. But I'm definitely for this project. I want to move forward, and I'm really super excited to keep the funkiness in the funk zone, but in an organized, cool fashion. And I'm definitely for it. I love the space. So thank you for your time. Cheers.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jill Johnson. I'm the owner of Lovewarn, co-owner, and I've also been in this town a long, long time, been a retailer for a long time. I am very excited about the plans that are here in front of us. I'm thrilled. I love the preservation of the building and also the updates that it's affording us. And it's been a long time in the making, but I agree with Wally and my other colleagues here. I'm down there every day, actually operating my shop, and so many people love it. And this is something that has just evolved over time into, it is really the funkiest building in the funk zone. And you can't duplicate that. You can't go back in time and make it look like it's cool and make it look like all these people over the years have contributed to it. People are fascinated by it. My own social media, I can't even tell you how many people are taking photos of it all day long. And I just think it's such a draw. I think it's a star child of the funk zone and of Santa Barbara's economy. So I hope that we can get on with this project, and hopefully soon, because summer's our big time. And I think that I'm happy that it's had so much support in the community, and I'm also really proud of all the efforts gone into the plans for this building and everybody's time and talent. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I support it 100%. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board regarding this project? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment and go on to questions. Richard, would you like to start?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. I can't quite tell if the light fixtures chosen are down spreading. Where was that? I noticed is the fixture up in this dome, or is it directly outside the glass and thus being a glare issue? It seems like this one, I don't know what that internal thing is. I'm concerned about the spread and the nature of the lighting for the poles, and therefore, because the wall fixtures are exactly the same issue there.
Sure. Chair Moore and Board Member 6, let's pull this. Why we brought the full spec here so we can see it. It is an LED module. In particular, we have the 64 module and the 48 for the walls, and the 64 is for the poles. And they are indeed way up here, and I highlighted here, they're full cutoff optics and dark sky compliant.
All fixtures?
All the fixtures,
Great.
yeah. So that's why we brought the full cut sheets.
And then I see you have a roof plan for the restaurant equipment. Does that include all the equipment on the roof? Maybe because we're in the funk zone, we can express the rooftop units, but usually we don't do that. So are those that screen, what is that, 105? I'll turn to 105. So these are all your equipment, correct? And there's no equipment out in here? Is this a roof plan?
Yes.
The roof plan? Yeah.
Yes. Board Member 6, through the chair. Yes, the portion of the building of the TI, this is their quadrant of the building. All of the equipment is over the kitchen area in the rear portion.
Mhm.
And then, yes, we have this screen detail, which we had previously presented as well. The scope of the rest is really to remove, there's some unpermitted things on the roof itself and little structures and pop-ups. The scope of the rest of it is for all of that to get demolished, and there's no other equipment in the area, other areas of the roof. So the entire roof will be reconstructed on this, in this project scope.
So there's no affected 2 or 3-story buildings to the west of you that would be looking in the back side of this?
Chair and Board Member 6, not that we're aware of. We're probably, I don't know, 60 feet maybe to this point.
From the edge of the parapet?
From the edge of the roof eave, yes. If it's a concern of the board, we could certainly, I think with the work we're doing, bring the screen all the way around.
Well, okay, I think there's an easy solution to that once, if we need to go to consent on it, so. So is there a double check valve, fire sprinkler riser? Where are those normally, if we're going to give this final?
Certainly, Board Member 6 and the chair. Everything is along Anacapa, so we've got the full civil plans in here, but probably what you're more interested in is the landscape screening, so I'll probably just turn to the landscape plans, actually. So they are indicated in these 2 locations here. We have the plumbing, domestic water, backflow assembly, and then the fire sprinkler assembly here. So we've got, here they are, backflow preventers 2, see civil plans, and then landscape can take you through the screening.
And the riser within the is it within the building or outside the building? Or is it an existing riser?
No, this is a brand new, it would be a brand new system. And that part of it hasn't been designed yet. That'll be the next step of the design. There are some areas within kind of the common areas that potentially we could locate it on the inside of the building, but it's yet to be designed.
Maybe if you put it on the outside and let it rust, it would be more appropriate to the funk zone. Right? Yeah, I think that that concludes my questions.
Okay, Bob?
Hey, by any chance have live samples of the pavers?
I don't. I do have photos of the install at the neighboring property, if you'd like to see those.
Great.
Sure.
See what those colors.
It's a blend for the field, and where did those go? So, and actually, so this is here.
And that's the field?
And this is the field, yes. And so the color is dark gray pewter charcoal blend. So it's like, it's sort of a warm, light and medium gray blend, and then the inset, or 8x8s, are just a solid charcoal dark gray.
So this is charcoal.
Yeah, and they're set with the wider joint. That's how they're permeable. So they will have the gravel in between, and they do have a chamfer on this side.
And is
And the
this
spacers.
the gravel?
That's the gravel.
Had you given any thought to coloring this to maybe more closely mimic the color of the windows, the building, the reds?
Like the red?
Yeah.
We thought about it, but I didn't want to have it look like a poor replica of what's on the building. I wanted it to be different.
Okay.
So
You have a light fixture here, a pole light. What's the height of that again?
The poles are 12 feet.
Okay, are you at all concerned about the massive foliage of the dragon tree interfering with the light fixture?
not at this time, just because the size that they are going in is not going to be anywhere near that height. So, and those are really slow growers. So I think in time, they'll grow taller, but the intent is that they're they're much shorter when they go in. And there's not a lot of other options for locations for the pole. So, we're somewhat limited in that side.
Okay, well, just a little comment. It would seem like you could move it over so it's directly between these two.
Sure.
Okay.
Happy to do that.
What's the logic behind having about 75% of your open ground in the landscaping just mulch?
We have the existing eucalyptus trees here,
Mhm.
so the intent was to keep it pretty minimal in terms of what's planted under those trees.
But over here,
Otherwise, the landscape at this property will be hand watered, so we didn't want to have, a fully covered ground essentially. And I didn't like the idea of having it feel too gardeny. We wanted it to feel a little bit less refined in terms of planting design. So,
okay. Have you consulted with the city arborist regarding street trees?
yes.
And
And we actually aren't proposing any work within the right-of-way, so what's there will remain. So they're not requesting anything, as far as I know.
okay, thank you. No further questions.
No further questions.
Questions? David?
No other questions.
Okay. Just follow up on Bob's question. Is this pole-mounted fixture necessary for site lighting in this location?
I'd prefer to keep it there because, in other words, our accessible path is here, so we do need to have a certain number of foot candles. It's getting a bit far away from the building. The planters have grown, and we could certainly look at another location that could be a little bit better refined as far as getting a good throw but not interfering with it. So I think we'd like to keep it from that standpoint,
Okay.
but would entertain a little bit more refined location.
Okay. Let's go to comments. Richard?
Yeah, I think the project has through previous meetings has done what we've wanted to see, and I think it's really ready for final approval. So I think it's ready for final.
Okay. Bob?
I like the plant palette. I think it's a very nice landscape plan. However, I can't accept just mulch in the planters. If that's what you want to do in the public parkway, I think that's acceptable, but I think you can achieve a funky landscape and still plant. The mulch, over time that's going to disappear and you're just going to have open earth. So again, you can have broad spreading ground covers in there that would do the job. If it's a matter of cost that you don't want to install an irrigation system, I understand that. But again, I think if you're going to be putting in new landscaping, this project should have a permanent drip irrigation system. Parks may not have requested street trees, but I think this board should require street trees of the species designated by the city arborist and at the spacing designated. The city needs trees, and it shouldn't be left up to an organization like Santa Barbara Beautiful to come along with the funding to plant trees in front of private properties. So I can support this project with those conditions imposed on it. Oh, also, one more thing. I think you've got some fairly tall plants along here, but in front of the backflow prevention device, I think you need to shift some of these things around so that you've got something that's going to have a height of at least 3 feet between the sidewalk and the backflow preventer. I think ultimately there's going to be a conflict between the dragon trees and that light pole. If you could relocate the light pole to somewhere along here. Is this all new paving?
It's a raised deck.
It is now? It exists as
No,
it is?
it will
Okay.
be a raised, it's a proposed new raised deck.
I would think moving that light over here, at least 10 feet away from that dragon tree would be a whole lot better, because ultimately there's going to be a conflict, and then the owner is going to have to deal with it one way or another, and we don't want to see a tree removed in order to accommodate a light fixture. So again, that would be another issue. Okay, I'm done. Thank you.
Comments?
I agree this project's ready for final. I do also agree with Board Member Cunningham's comments here. And also, I think we should take up the applicant's willingness to look at the west side of the rooftop screening. And so as long as he's willing to do that, I think we should pursue that. But I don't think it ought to delay the project through our committee. That's all.
Okay.
No comments.
Okay. David?
I agree with most of the comments that Mr. Cunningham has.
Chair Moore?
Yes.
I'll take this opportunity. If Board Member Black and Board Member Whalen could state on the record whether they've reviewed the videos and the minutes to bring themselves up to speed.
I'd have to say I've not looked at the video. I've reviewed the plans. Sir.
I am not up to date and will abstain on the vote.
All right. This is a PDA action, though. So technically, wouldn't they be allowed to review these without a video? Reviewing the video?
No, they needed to bring themselves up to speed. But you do have...
We have quorum.
You do have a quorum, so...
Okay.
As regarding myself, I was not here in 2017. I did bring myself up to date on that meeting.
Great.
As far as Mr. Black's comments are concerned, he's reviewed the landscape plans. Essentially, it isn't a new landscape plan, but it hasn't changed substantially from its earlier iterations. So I don't know why he would not be able to comment on this particular edition. But the lawyer here.
May I proceed or no?
Well, it sounds like he'll have to recuse himself or from voting. Is that correct? And making comments?
That's what your guidelines say, but...
So, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you going to allow David an opportunity to speak?
Well, he won't be able to make comments then. We do have 4 voting members.
Okay, I would like to give this PDA, but I have serious concerns about the landscaping and the location of that light pole. So I would like to continue this to consent for PDA if that's possible, with the comments on the landscaping to be addressed, specifically provide ground cover plantings in the landscaped areas that are shown as mulch only, excluding the parkway strip. Get direction from the city arborist to specify a specific number of street trees at spacing as directed by the arborist in the parkway strip, and relocate the light pole that will be potentially in conflict with the dragon trees.
Was that
That's a motion. Continue to consent. for PDA.
Second under discussion. If the maker of the motion would add that, or if they're coming to consent, if the applicant would bring a photo from the roof looking west to make sure that there's no offended parties by the lack of the screen wall in the area of the equipment. And if there are a lot of offended parties, then provide the west screen wall. It is and I would like to add, it is the if regardless of any technical, code compliant or accessibility issues with the, let's back up, I'm sorry. If the staff determines that the west elevation of the building cannot be avoided in the scope, that the board is okay with the aesthetics of the west elevation regardless of technical, code compliant and accessibility issues.
Do you accept that?
Understand what I'm saying?
I'll take your word for it. Yes, I'll go along with that. I'd like to add one more thing. The landscape architect should address the better screening of the backflow prevention device near the trash enclosure with regard to the plant selection. And Mr. Six's comment
Excuse me,
is...
Chair Moore and Chair Moore, could I offer a suggestion? These comments sound pretty detail-oriented, like things that would be addressed at final.
I was just going to suggest that if the maker of the
maybe not hold up a
motion-
project design approval, but these are the types of things you'd be looking for typically at a final review, not necessarily project design approval stage.
Yeah, that was going to be my input, if the maker of the motion would amend their motion to provide a project design approval with these comments to come back for final on consent. There's nothing that's...
Well, I'm looking at the applicant's wish to get this moving along.
Mm-hmm.
If they come back on consent with the conditions met, then it should be acceptable. And I think that the consent review committee can certify that those conditions are met. We're not changing the architecture, except the possibility of an additional screen for the rooftop equipment. And again, that can be reviewed and approved on consent. I don't think this is too complex for consent approval.
I think it would just be beneficial for everybody if we could get to project design approval here and then final on consent.
Okay, well then I will change my motion to project design approval with the conditions as stated.
Chair Moore, one more suggestion if you'll entertain one. Taking that a step further, looking at the list of things to return on consent, they're fairly straightforward yes or no items. For example, the roof screening, if the fourth side, it should match the other three sides that the board's okay with. The presence of ground cover and the planters. Check with the city arborist on the street trees. As I understood it, the light pole is, you've kind of directed where that needs to go, about 10 feet toward the south, next to that deck, et cetera. If that could return to staff review, with the board granting a final approval. Another option would be the board grant final approval of the project with some details to return on consent for board review.
So, under the guidelines, Chair Moore, board members, if you're going to give final approval and then it needs to return to the consent agenda, it shouldn't go to staff for ministerial approval. So I I agree. I think the approach that you're taking with regards to if you want to do the project design approval and then send it to final on consent, I think that's a fairly straightforward way to go and consistent with your guidelines.
Is that what you're looking for, Kevin? Sounded to me like you wanted the full board to review this again on final. So final on consent.
That was my suggestion.
Okay.
It's your motion.
That was my intent.
But APD now.
Yeah. So, yeah, but, okay. So, motion for project design approval as stated, with the conditions as stated. And do you want me to read this stuff now? Richard, do you want to second the motion first?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
As revised.
This project complies with all city regulations and is consistent with ABR guidelines. This proposed design of the development is compatible with the distinctive architectural character of Santa Barbara and of the particular neighborhood surrounding the project. Size, mass, bulk, height, and scale of the proposed development is appropriate for its neighborhood. The design of the proposed development is appropriately sensitive to adjacent city landmarks / designated historic resources, historic sites, or natural features, and mitigation measures are adequate to reduce adverse impacts. The design of the proposed project responds appropriately to established public vistas. The design of the proposed development includes an appropriate amount of project open space and landscaping.
Okay.
And Chair Moore, for the record, with regards to the first finding with compliance to the codes, I know that there has been some suggestion in public comment that there might be some code violations on the property. Just to be clear, when you're making that motion, you're only looking to the project scope, so anything outside of that, any potential violations that we may be investigating or not aware of is not included in that.
That's understood.
And then the motion included returning to
Consent for final
Okay.
approval.
Okay. Do we want to read back the items for final?
Yes.
Mr. Chair, board members, we have a project design approval with a continuation to consent for final approval. That the applicant get direction from the city arborist on the species and number of trees that can be planted in the parkway, relocate light pole in potential conflict with dragon trees, provide more plantings between the parking area and the right-of-way, bring photo of from the roof looking west. If there are neighbors that can see the roof, extend the screen wall to shield rooftop equipment. If the staff determines that the west elevation of the building cannot be avoided in the scope, the board is okay with the aesthetics of the Helena elevation regardless of technical issues. And landscape architect shall improve screening between right-of-way and backflow preventers.
Let's be specific about the areas that are currently shown as mulched, correct? Are you?
That would be all
You're
areas on the
applying-
private property side of the right-of-way line.
Okay.
And I'll add, it's not a condition, but if you don't install an irrigation system, I'm afraid that the landscaping is going to deteriorate and there will be an enforcement case because things have died. Word of caution.
Okay. So we're set. So we had a first and a second. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? 2 abstentions. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and board members.
I agree with you about the irrigation.
Maybe you can push hard for it.
Fighting that battle for years.
Well, thank you.
That's fine.
Should have put it in the motion.
Yeah. Well,
Thank you.
yeah, I should have. Sorry. Okay, I'm going to step out for the next item, contract with the applicant.
Okay.
Are you coming back for the last one?
Yes.
So I have a question. We're going to do some things over at CAW that have some regard to maybe the sign committee or the sign ordinance. I just thought I'd ask.
Okay.
By you and
Item
some
number
advice
2,
whether or not we
400 West Pueblo.
pursue the idea. So
Come on down.
towards just as we finish. Sure. 5 minutes probably does it.
Sounds good.
All right, this is a proposal for a seismic retrofit for Cottage Hospital and includes construction of a new shear wall and reorientation of two existing windows. No change in the floor area is proposed as part of the scope of work. No final appealable decision will be made at this hearing. Project requires compliance with project compatibility analysis and the urban design guidelines. Welcome.
Thank you.
We turn those on, make sure that's on.
Heidi
Hit the
Jones
button.
with Suzanne Elledge's office. Los Alvarado with 196 Architects. So some of you might remember we came to you with a similar seismic upgrade, I think last year for the south wing of the Pueblo Pavilion. So this is very similar. This project doesn't have any proposed site alterations, no landscaping. It's just the shear wall and windows that Rosa will walk you through.
Okay.
Correct. So sometime in May of last year or so, we presented to you the south wing seismic retrofit, which entails the building in this area as well as the contemplative gardens on either end of the building. That's under construction now. Today, we are here to present to you the seismic retrofit work on the east wing, which is adjacent, and it's on Bath Street here. These are some images of the existing building. As Heidi mentioned, this is a seismic retrofit project, and it involves the addition of some shear walls and some concrete drag beams. And all of these are similar to what was done on the south wing. It's a substantially less complicated project. There's no site work. All of this is to be painted out to match the existing building, so we're not proposing any changes in color. The east elevation does include the addition of some windows in the shear wall, but other than that, it's just the addition of shear walls with drag beams in a few locations on the south and east ends of the building. We do have plans, but as Heidi mentioned, there's no proposed addition of area. It's strictly addition of some shear walls on the upper floors. You can see it here on the south end. On the inside, there will be some column wraps with some carbon fiber wraps for the shear, but other than that, the extent of the work is minor, and it will be painted out to match existing at all locations. Yeah, we do have an exterior elevation of the wall that has the impacts at the window. It occurs on the east elevation. This is what the elevation looks like now. And as you can see here, these windows will have to be taken out to accommodate a proposed shear wall. Here's the proposed plan. And it'll be infilled with a solid wall, and we will have the need for those windows on those two floors, so we were bringing that back in with one small window in those floors.
And this is facing Bath Street?
That's correct. That's on Bath Street.
And then around the corner on this side, you've got
Some
additional.
drag beams. I think it's best shown on the axonometric images, but you could see here, those windows would occur here. Shear wall, drag beams. Shear wall, drag beams. Here, and on the photos, you could see those windows would occur on the Bath side.
Can you point to where these locations are on this plan?
Right around here is where that drag beam would be.
And then the other locations?
And right about here. And I believe there's some on the back too, but there's a driveway here. You'd really never perceive it from the street.
Well, let's take a look at it anyway.
Sure.
We'd like to see the elevations of each of those.
Absolutely. So really quickly, here it is in AXO, and I'll take you to the elevation as well. that would be, oh, you really wouldn't see it much. So let's see. I think, actually, I may have fibbed. I think there we go, there's one there. So it would occur on the north elevation and the elevation.
What floor is that on?
This is the 3rd floor. Continues on to the 4th floor. And the 5th. Nothing here on the 6th other than on the south side. So we go to, we saw the east already. Here's the elevation on the south. Shear and drag, and I hope this is the west right here. So it's really not, it's just basically the wrapping of those columns there on the south.
But it's this too, isn't it?
Yes, I believe it is there.
So you're missing a little hatch pattern.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh, there it
No,
is.
it's the north, my bad. It's this one right there.
Okay. You might want to talk about how far these project, if this is in line with that, how does that, is it flush? Is it?
So the face of the shear walls will come out, I believe it's 6 to 8 inches or so from this face, so they do come out a little bit, but these projections pop out another, I would say another 8 to 12 inches, as would these drag beams. So it's best shown on the axonometric, I think. Sorry about that. So the verticals currently project about, I would say, 12 inches or so, and these would be flush with that, and the shear walls are
You
going to
mean,
be,
when you say vertical, you mean this area?
well, these
Talking
current
about the
vertical,
existing pilaster kind of
yes,
pieces?
they project out, and these would be in line with those. And then the shear wall, I do believe, comes back a little bit further behind those vertical elements.
This appears to project beyond.
Yeah, you're right, a little bit.
But this is flush with the face of these existing members.
Yep, you're right.
That's consistent in each of the locations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it'll all be painted white. No changes in color on any of those elements that we're proposing.
Okay. Anything else to add?
I believe that's the extent of the upgrades to the exterior of the building. That's
Okay.
it.
Then we will open for public comment. Would anyone in the audience like to address the board regarding this project? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment, move on to questions. We'll start down there, nothing?
No questions.
Dennis?
I'm put on the spot here. Why is it that these drag beams don't overlap the vertical columns or the vertical pilasters at their end points? It's kind of an engineering question. It doesn't look like there's much tie-in for the purposes of achieving lateral stability.
Are you questioning the lengths of these or why?
Right where your pointer is?
Yeah.
It doesn't lap, it just ends at the column.
Yeah, they tie in to the structure and the floors that are, the slabs that are at that point, and that's strictly an engineering.
Okay.
Cool.
And then my other question is relating to your photographs. Photograph number 2, view from Bath Street Alley. looking at that panel, it wouldn't appear that I would see that drag beam. Is that correct?
Not
For-
very
in
much.
From the point of view of the photograph? Number 2, it's on the top row. That one, right. And if I look at the axonometric B, you're really not going to see that one that much, right?
Not from the street, very much correct, because there
Okay.
is a driveway there.
Well, the street's out here. So as you're coming down the
That's-
street.
That's the front of the hospital there, the walkway. But the street is, sorry, can't see it very well.
Street's over here. I'm talking about this picture. This is the curb, right?
Well, I'm just limiting my,
No.
my comment to the point of view of the photograph, to understand the photograph as it relates to the axonometrics.
This is the curb right here. This is a driveway.
Yeah, that's the driveway, and
This
then the
is-
street's in front of you.
No, the street's right here.
Okay, yes, this is the east wing, the east elevation, right? God, it's so hard to see it upside down. This is the east elevation, and then this is the west, right?
But this is being infilled, correct?
So that's the
Yeah,
new
up
shear
there,
panel.
yes.
So it certainly is visible.
Oh, I see what you mean. From the street, yes.
But the specific question is, the drag beam wouldn't show that much.
Let me see well, again, there's a shear wall there,
Yes.
and that would be painted out just like that. And if there's a drag beam, you would see the protrusion of the drag beam. But again, it'd be painted out white. So you would see it from the street.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
Yeah.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Richard, questions?
Do you have these similar solution, the drag beam extending beyond the vertical column on the north seismic retrofit? Do you remember?
On the south wing, yes, we do have some of these happening there.
Exact same design with it protruding out as it does.
And shear walls as well, yes. Mm-hmm.
So it's been done before. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
I recall there being fewer drag beams on the other side,
We have those X braces.
and the X braces, right?
On the stair tower, there's X braces on that one,
Right.
correct?
Okay, and then so the drag beams occur at the floor level, correct? So
Yes.
that's tying
On the
into
underside of the
floor.
ceilings slab, yes, the floor ceiling slab, correct.
Okay. Was there any attempt to make these architectural rather than strictly structural upgrades? Like any other studies done to further the aesthetic appearance? Because this is facing the street.
Yes.
This side is certainly very visible, as
Mhm.
is this.
The only consideration we had, and we thought you might think was awkward, was the difference in length in these two. And we could do a faux extension here, to have some symmetry. But the structural engineers tried really hard to do the very least amount possible to the building to make it seismically strengthened. And we did opt to go to the exterior because it was too intrusive at the exterior and disruptive to the occupants from the inside. So we did think about the possibility of this being an issue. But other than that, we tried to get more window space here as well, but we're lucky to have gotten any windows at all. The structural engineer wanted a solid shear panel there.
Sure.
To strengthen the building at that point.
The little awning.
We call them eyebrows.
Eyebrows, yeah. So they're at the window head?
Yes.
So they're slightly dropped from the floor level above? Is that right?
It's about right, yeah.
Okay. And you didn't happen to bring a view of your AXO, like from the public way, like at eye level, looking at the building?
Only thing we have would be photographs of that area, but the AXO was not done at that point, no.
Okay. Let's go to comments. David, would you like to start?
I don't have any comments, thanks.
Okay.
I would reinforce that idea that you were touching on, Chair Moore, that it seems that the ends of the drag beams are unresolved from a design point of view, and they're not well integrated into the final design of the building, perhaps overlapping the columns or chamfering them or stepping them in some ways. They seem to be appear to be stuck on.
Are you thinking chamfering them at the verticals, like at the ends here?
I wouldn't want to suggest a specific end, but looking for other clues around the building. I haven't looked at it that closely. And this is especially true on axonometric view A, which is, I believe, a prominent street side.
At Beth.
Those precisely, yes.
Yes. Okay.
Anything else?
No, thank you.
Yes, in regard to your comment, Chairman Moore, about has there been consideration, architectural consideration, whether there has been or not, there is architectural elements here. They're going to, even though they're painted white, they're going to cast shadows. So they're going to be quite obvious what's happening here. It's not intended, this is a comment that is not intended to suggest a change, but to at least recognize the fact that this is something that will be seen, even though they're white.
Yep.
That's all.
Okay. Richard, do you want?
And Mr. Chair, I do also have a problem with the extended, the drag beams proud of the rest of the vertical columns and so forth. And if there's a different dimension that they could be higher than wider, I don't know whether that's in the game. So they would go down below the floor, instead of a square grade beam, it would be a tall rectangular grade beam that would be narrow enough to get behind those vertical columns. Or, I'm sure the amount of money that is going to be expended here, that this should become an architectural feature and take a false beam all the way across that full elevation.
Here and here.
Here and here and there and there, yeah, and here.
To continue the horizontality of that.
To continue that make it a building feature rather than only where it's needed as an engineering add-on. Might be the solution if the proportions of the beam cannot be changed and brought back between the vertical columns.
Okay.
Yeah, I think what you're showing us is an engineering solution.
It very much is.
And what this building really deserves and requires is a fully thought out architectural and engineering solution. So I would definitely consider looking into what Richard was suggesting and look at alternate means of providing the same drag. Like, would it be better or even feasible if these pieces were infilled instead of having these drag beams exposed? Like, could you get the same work?
Same shear?
Out of infilled panels, which would eliminate some of the oddities and
We
don't know.
can have the engineer explore that.
So, just, shooting from the hip, so this is something that, you need to design. Yes.
May I add, on the windows, where's the isometric of that?
Right there.
Yeah, you just see the peak of it here. If there was a way to, the architecture is so strong with window band, window band, window band, window band. I would think if this could be ever so slightly within the limits of the thickness of, within your engineering limits, if that horizontal band from column to column can be slightly recessed and painted differently.
Just kind of mimic that window.
So the window band is at least reflected in a paint or recess,
Again, for shadow purposes and kind of continuity of that.
continuity, yeah, even though it's not a window, it's slightly reset. The surface for that height of that window is recessed, and maybe even that new window is not as recessed as the others. It is in line with the painted color of the recessed band.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. All right, so this is concept review. Still need a motion. So I will make a motion for indefinite continuance.
Okay.
Unless this is something you can probably not get back in 2 weeks. That's probably a lot to ask.
No, not necessarily. We can try and be back in 2 weeks.
Okay, so drawings would be due the Wednesday prior. Okay, so 2-week continuance, back to the full board. With following comments, that the board wishes the applicant to continue to study the design and provide a holistic architectural solution to this engineering problem, and to fully integrate the design into the building.
Second.
Okay, discussion? Okay, first and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Very good observations. Do you want me to take them back? I'll take one. That's yours.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item number 3, 2840 De La Vina. Come on down. Yes. Okay, this is a proposal for a commercial remodel of an existing shopping center, and this consists of repainting the exterior or existing northern structure to match the new grocery outlet color scheme. Project design and final approval is requested, and this requires compliance with project compatibility analysis, urban design guidelines, Upper State Street design guidelines. It was last year, February 10th. Welcome back. You can state your name.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Pettit, and I'm with Lauterbach and Associates Architects.
Okay. I'll just read the motion. Continue 2 weeks. Following comments. The board appreciates the color board and detail provided. Applicant shall provide a color scheme that is simplified and potentially not identical to the east grocery outlet elevation. Colors provided should minimize the awkward arch spring points and doors. Okay. So what have you?
So what we did is basically looked at what was approved for the grocery outlet front portion or side portion of that building, which was a bottom painted wainscot, and then the field color of the building. In this particular elevation, there are no vertical elements. So we basically just kind of came in, this shows the shadow effect, but we basically just minimized all the different materials that are there and went with the field color paint and then the base color, kept the red door, and just kind of made the unfortunate arches kind of disappear. On the new color board that we submitted, you can kind of see what it is without this is the old color board.
Okay.
The new one is down there.
Okay. All right. Okay. Anything else to add?
That's pretty much it.
Okay. So we'll open for public comment. Anyone would like to address the board? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Richard, you want to start with questions?
Yes, can we come back to the photo? This line along the arch, is that an old exposed window mullion, or what?
It's a
what
trim.
creates that black line?
It's what we found is a trim piece. So it didn't look like it was the old,
it's a wood trim piece?
Yeah, it's a trim piece. If I'm not mistaken, that's correct.
And
It could have been part of the original window, but from the old documents that we found, it looks like the original window was metal. It was a storefront. So.
Can it be removed without, is the surface
We'd love to
above,
remove it.
is the surface above and the surface below in the same plane?
Substantially, yes.
Substantially.
It might be,
If-
it's hard to tell, it might be off 1/8 of an inch.
If you remove that, would there be a problem?
No.
Thank you.
Rob? Questions?
Yes, does the color guacamole appear on the revised scheme? There are two greens on there. Which one is used?
Which is? It's the same color.
It's the same. They're one and the same.
One and the same.
They just don't look the same.
Nothing green looks the same there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is printed. This is the actual chip.
That's the actual chip, correct.
That explains it, thank you.
No questions from me. Okay. What happens as you turn the corner then? This corner, did we go through that yet?
So this is the corner on the side, and so this is this portion right here.
There it is, okay.
So once again, it would just kind of tie in as it comes through here. This is the shadow effect. So it would just blend right in as it does to the current color scheme and turn the corner the same way.
Okay.
I don't think my there's an eighth of an inch difference, so
It could be as much as, we didn't measure it.
so if we had those removed, then you might have to fur something in?
Yes,
Okay, thanks. Are you willing to do that?
yes.
Okay, this is a question for Board Member 6 then. So this would appear to be a single squared off opening. That's your question?
Yeah.
Can that be achieved? And these
That's what he's saying, either.
We would
four-
love that to happen.
These four. Okay. Let's go to comments then.
I think the scheme is simplified enough that it's provable with the caveat that remaining echo of those old arches be disappear completely and a complete flush plain rectangle from floor to ceiling.
Nothing to add.
Anyone else? Any comments?
I think it's a much improved from last time, and the simplicity of it is helpful. I think if you weren't duplicating the colors of the project across the parking lot, I might suggest different colors, but given that that's what you're doing, I don't have any suggestions there. That's my only comment.
Okay.
I would reinforce both of those comments. To Member 6's comments, there's something very odd about the arch remaining and yet being painted below with the same material spanning from the ground to the top. So somehow resolving that into a solid panel sounds like a good approach to resolving the question of that ghost of a former opening, shall we say.
Okay.
I agree with it.
Okay. And just a follow-up question. So is this also like a vertical siding in there?
is.
And then what's above it?
It's similar material.
So
Maybe
you would just-
exact, yeah.
You would just do vertical siding in there and paint it. Okay. Somebody want to make a motion?
Is
This is PDA and final, if we'd like.
okay? I would move for project design approval and final approval with the color, with the idea that the colors are and arrangement of placement of the colors are acceptable, that the applicant will remove the echoes of the old arch in the three filled-in arches, or four filled-in arches, and make a continuous plane of vertical siding from bottom of soffit to sidewalk.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
I need to do
Oh, we have to do the.
our song and dance.
Yep.
So the preliminary and final approval also find that the project is compatible. It is in, as far as we know, is all compliance with the city charter and municipal code. It is consistent with design guidelines of the general city. It is compatible with the architectural character of the city and the neighborhood, given that it's simplified painting and minimum facade modifications. its appropriate size, mass, bulk, and scale, as the project does not change any of those. It is sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources, as there are none in the local area. There's no effect to the public views, and the question whether it's appropriate amount of open space is moot because there's no change in open-end landscaping.
Okay.
Does the seconder of the motion accept those incorporations?
Yes.
Right. So we have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Leave this here with you.
Keep those. All right. And with that, that is our final item. We will close the Architectural Board of Review agenda for the 24th. Thank you very much.